Hello, my lovely listeners, and welcome to my podcast, We Share, We Grow. I'm your host and holistic coach, Aoife Rafter. If you want to be empowered to take action in your self-development journey, then you are in the right place. We Share, We Grow will bring you closer to reaching your full potential through sharing and growing from the life-changing advice of my favourite health and wellness experts. I believe that we grow through what we go through, and together we can become abundant in all aspects of health and wellness despite our health challenges. I'm so excited to be part of your self-development journey, just as so many of you have been part of mine. So let's do this. Let's share and grow together. Hello, my lovely listeners, and welcome to season 1 of my new podcast, We Share, We Grow. My next guest is truly a beautiful one. Her purpose in life is to help unfulfilled and overwhelmed women take the next step in their lives, ensuring that they have no regrets through her life coaching and Reiki healing services. Not only all of that, but she is also a primary school teacher and has experienced a cancer diagnosis during the pandemic. Please welcome this incredible woman, Rachael Smith. Welcome, Rachael. I'm
Oh,
so glad to have you.
thank you. Oh, thanks so much, Aoife.
You're so welcome. As I said in your introduction, you are a life coach, a Reiki healer, and a primary school teacher, which just sounds like so much. And you're a mum, which that's a lot to be trying to take on your plate. But would you like to explain to our listeners a little bit, I suppose, how you got to this point in your life and your career?
Yeah, I suppose I was thinking about this today, and so this is my 20th year as a primary school teacher.
Gosh.
And I have been working in the same gorgeous school in Oban and Tala in a junior school. And it was the decision to be a teacher wasn't even a decision. It was just something that was always there. Or I remember like being 5-year-old child in school, and I knew I wanted to be a teacher and absolutely loved it, loved interacting with the children and with the parents, and just had really good friends there. And I'm originally from Tala as well, so I just felt like my heart was in that place. And life was ticking over. I had Adam, my first child, when I was 30, and then I had Ryan a couple of years afterwards. And then I was 7 months pregnant on my son Luke, and just out of the blue, I lost my brother Alan to suicide. And I suppose at that stage, what had happened before that was I was very overwhelmed with the two young boys. There was 19 months between them. I started to get interested in personal development and what makes people happy. And I remember walking around the library and picking up this book by Gretchen Rubin called The Happiness Project. Have you ever come across that?
I haven't actually, no.
And I remember reading it, and what she did was she realized that life was passing her by, and she was on the subway. She was from New York, and she was on the subway one day, and she realized like 10 years had kind of passed in the blink of an eye. And she was saying that she was just going from one thing to the next, from one year to a birthday to an anniversary to a holiday, but not actually taking it in. And she decided to make the next year really intentional. And each month she would focus on a different area of her life, whether it was to do with connection or career or home improvements, but just to really like get into her life. And I remember reading this, and it kind of struck me like, oh my God, like I have a say in my life. I get to create it. It was just mind blowing for me. And that sort of started the path. And I remember I used to go down to a yoga class, this gorgeous place called Barefoot Yoga in Lucan. And I used to go down there once a week. And I used to find that that was my release. Like we would do meditation. Sometimes it would be hot yoga. Sometimes it would be yoga nidra. It would be really, really gentle. And I would come out of there and I'd feel like all my worries and stresses was melting away from me. But then as the week went on, I was like wound up again until the following week. And then I released it. And I said to myself, I can't live my life like that. I'm going to have to start bringing some of those practices home. So that's what started my meditation practice. I sometimes would look up yoga YouTube videos. And I started to meditate in the morning before going to school. And I just found that it had a massive impact. And you know yourself, it's like dipping your toe in, and then you discover a whole world, and then you find more things, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I didn't realize that people were living like this. And like my mom used to
Yes.
slag me, saying my mom used to mind the two kids, and she said, I'm up to my eyes here with the kids, and Rachel's sitting on her bed meditating before school. But I found that on the days that I did that, that was the days that I was able to deal with things better. I was calmer, I was in better form. I just kind of collected myself. And then that turned into a gratitude practice. So I had built up all of these tools and I loved podcasts and everything like that. So when we lost my brother, then I was sort of like probably 3 or 4 years into even realizing what self-care was and personal awareness. So that was such a shock. But lucky for me, I had tools that I could use. And in the very early days, it was like completely lower my expectations. So my expectations of myself was to eat every day properly, to wash myself, to get sleep. That was it. Eat, sleep, and wash. That was all that I expected of myself. And it was very much living in the moment, because what was to come in a week's time or a month's time, it was so scary to imagine a life or a world where my brother wasn't there. What were my parents going to be like? How was I going to bring this new baby into the world? How was I going to face people? Because for me, suicide was something that didn't happen to our family. Like, what is that about? I didn't understand it at all. We didn't know that my brother Alan was struggling. We weren't aware there was a problem, and he was traveling at the time. So I hadn't seen him since the previous year. So it was like a complete shock. So what I suppose my mission, I had my son then 2 months later, and my mission was, how can I raise my children and have a wonderful life despite having this awful thing happen to me? I wasn't going to be defined by this thing. And I remember my dad 3 or 4 days after my brother had died. So there's four of us in the family. I'm the eldest, and then Alan was next. And we've Barry and we have Amy, my sister. My sister's 15 years younger than me. So there's a nice stretch of ages. And my dad said to me on probably 4 days after Alan died, he said, people say that it takes 10 years to get over people or to grieve. And he said, we're not doing that. He said, we're not doing that. He said, we are going to still try and live a good life and still have that hurt and that grief and that pain alongside happiness. There's a great saying that you can have happiness and hurt in the same room. And for me, it gave me that permission, because my dad is the head of the house. I suppose we follow our parents, our role models. Even though I was 35 at the time, our parents are role models for us. And he gave me that permission to still have a good life, to still have a laugh, to not be feeling guilty about enjoying my life because my brother wasn't there anymore. And I really embraced it. And I remember, like, I would be listening to podcasts, probably podcasts like yours, about I loved Oprah's Super Soul Conversations, because
Yes,
she used
love
to
that.
have, yeah, I mean, she would have people that had been through horrific things, like, escaping from burning buildings, and people who their children have died or the parents had died or awful things had happened. But yet these people had managed to still go on and live extraordinary lives. And that became my mission. And I had this like urge, or this like restlessness in myself, that there was something else I have to do. And I kept saying it to my friends, something else I have to do. There's something else I have to do. And out of nowhere, one day I was in the car and I was like, oh my God, it's life coaching. What I didn't realize when I was listening to on the podcast, it was all life coaches. And so Alan died in the March, and that November I went to see a medium, spoke to her about different things. Wasn't really aware of the career change, and she said to me, "You're going to have a career change really soon, and you're going to help a lot of people." And I said, well, I love teaching, so maybe that's what you mean. And literally 3 months later, I was on the life coaching course and started that. That went on about 8 months' time. And then I qualified as a life coach. So that's
Wow.
where the journey started. Yeah.
There's like so many different things like I want to pick apart in that story. Like there's so much. Firstly, like I'm actually amazed at your own dad, because I think generationally, like that's not very common, especially in men, to say, we can do both. We don't have to, this doesn't have to completely define every day of our lives. We can live with it instead of like for the grief, because I
Mm-hmm.
think that's really tough. So like that's amazing, that piece on its own. But then also like what you're saying about lowering your expectations when you were just so newly rawly grieving, because obviously like it was also a sudden death, so like that's a whole nother level and layer of grief on its own. I remember like when I was in the height of my depression, I wish I had lowered my expectations, because
Mm-hmm.
I actually even have that question written out for you today, because I was like, how when you know what you're supposed to do to make yourself feel better, you know the logic. Just because you're depressed doesn't mean, or grieving doesn't mean you're all of a sudden like completely stupid. You know what you're supposed to do, but it's so hard to try and make any movement forward in that because you feel physically paralyzed in some, like if it gets that overwhelming, you can feel physically paralyzed. So I think that's such practical advice of just lowering the expectations. You talk about that a lot on Instagram. Your content's so good.
Thank you. And I suppose when we have been through trauma, like I have never experienced depression. So, but I definitely understand that feeling of like you're walking around and there feels like there's 3 or 4 cement blocks in your on your head.
Mm,
I remember early on, I that sensation, this sounds really bizarre, but I had that sensation of wanting to lie on the ground. I suppose it was that sense of grounding myself, connecting back to the
yeah,
earth. I wanted to feel safe. And it was like a physical pain. I still remember that physical pain, that my heart was hurting, everything was hurting. And it was that sense of absolutely lower your expectations and doing your best. So my best back then was probably like 2%
yeah,
of what I'm capable of now. But I was like, okay. But the most important thing to me over that time was my gratitude journal. And I started the gratitude journal back in 2015 when I read, I think it was a Marion Keyes book, and it was a fictional book. And she spoke about how this girl and her partner used to ride it. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, that's kind of an interesting idea. But when I look back on my journal over 2017, there are only 9 days that I missed my gratitude practice. So
wow,
on the day that Alan died, I think I wrote on it, Alan's gone. No, that was it. But little by little, because Alan was traveling, it took 2 weeks for us to get him home. So can you
mm,
imagine? You know, in Ireland, it's like someone dies and 3 days later, there's the
it's all
funeral. We
over.
had 2 weeks, which was incredible, but very difficult because there was people coming and going to my parents' house all the time. There was decisions to be made. Sometimes the decisions took so long to make about his funeral and all that sort of stuff. So even over that time, I remember some of the things I wrote in my gratitude practice. I laughed today. We went to Bray with the kids and no one knew what had happened. It was so freeing. Somebody brought over a stew. Like one night we were in our house, my family was here. They came over to my house because when we were in my parents, everyone kept calling, whereas over in my house in Lucan, we were sort of free.
Mm,
And we were all sitting down about to talk about like the funeral. Can you imagine how heavy that was? And next thing, ding dong, and 3 of my neighbors were at the door with like baskets of food for us, sandwiches, cakes, and so even now I've got goosebumps thinking about that. So that was where my focus was. And there was so many like awakenings at that time for me. I mean, I remember one time someone saying to me something like, oh, did such and such call in? And I said, no, they didn't call in. And their attitude was, I can't believe they didn't call in. Like, that's so awful. And my attitude was, this awful thing has happened. I have no room in my heart anymore
yeah,
for giving out, for cribbing, for
yeah,
complaining. So it was like my heart was like pulsating, and all I could see and all I wanted to talk about was the amazing things that people did. So I didn't focus on what people didn't do. I focused on the things that people did do. And I really believe that like the reason that I'm able to cope with challenges now is really down to that time. And I
mm,
remember thinking that Alan's gift to me was to bring me through the dark depths of losing somebody that you love. Because myself and Alan were together. I was 10 and Alan was 7 before our next sibling came along. So we're like, we were best pals. We shared bunk beds together. I used to sing him to sleep at night time. Like we were best pals. And I feel like nobody knew Alan the way I did when he was a kid. Like we were very, very similar. We looked the same with similar personalities. So his gift to me was, you are going to live a life of gratitude, of joy, of adventure. And even now in my business, like I have a lot of really exciting opportunities. Like I was speaking at the Aviva a while ago. I'm asked
wow.
to present talks. Now, when I say the Aviva, it wasn't in front of 70,000 people. It was like in a
Still, it's
room.
the
Yeah.
Aviva.
Yeah. Because when I told my kids, they were like, what? And I said, yeah, it's in one of the rooms. But I've been given all these opportunities and I never see them as scary. Like that's fun. That's exciting. That's, scary to me is like thinking about at nighttime what must have been going through my brother's head, or Scary was picking out a coffin for him, or do you understand? It's totally
Yeah, it's
different
so
to
different.
the opportunities that I have. So yeah, I learned so much in that process. And I also believe that, I really want to do Alan's life justice, that at the end of my life that I can say, well, I did this, not that I'm doing it for him. He doesn't need me to do it for him, but if I get to the end of my life, what good is it to him if I spend my life grieving, or, like numbing myself with alcohol, or not being present for my kids? Like, I can honestly say that my children haven't suffered because of this. They have seen me cry, absolutely. And yesterday, my son came in, and in school they do this thing called In November We Remember. And
Mm.
he came in, and Ryan, who's my middle child, he was Alan's godson, and he looks really like Alan. And
Wow.
myself, Ryan, and Alan look very like. And he came
Mm.
in, and he just burst into tears. And he said, "We were doing In November We Remember." And because my granddad had died the next year, then Alan died, and the next year my nana died. So it's just so much
Wow.
grief. And he was really upset. And I said to him, I gave him a hug, and I said, well, if you're crying, you're remembering him, and that's okay. And I said, I can't take away your pain from you, because that's your pain. But do you know what I'm going to do? And he said, what? I said, tonight you're gonna have a lovely bath, and I'm going to put bath salts in it. And you go upstairs and pick out one of those bath bombs. And I had all these rose petals and Epsom salts. And I said, it's not going to like heal your heart, but it's going to make you feel so much better. So this was on his mind. And he did it, and I lit a candle, and he was like Lord Muck up there. All I was sure to do was eat grapes. But it just showed him resilience, that yes, awful things can happen, but we can mind ourselves, we can look after ourselves, we can cry and weep and feel sad, but we don't have to stay in that. So that's really what I'm so passionate about helping other people with, that please don't wait until you lose someone, or you have a health risk, or a
Mm-hmm.
health scare, or you lose a job or a relationship, that if we're building up those tools now, when the challenge comes in, we're like, okay, this is what we need to do here. I need
Yeah.
to stop doing this. I need to start doing this. I need to watch who I'm mixing with. I need to watch who I'm telling intimate details with. Who
Yeah,
are the people, so it's all part of the toolbox. So
definitely.
yeah, and I'm still learning every day. I mean, there's always challenges.
Oh my God, still learning. I have to say, I've never got emotional interviewing anybody, but I actually have been holding back the tears. Your resilience is totally like overwhelming. Like I thought I was fairly resilient, but like to find gratitude in such a difficult time, like I openly did not. Like I was depressed. I fed my depression. I hated it, and I hated my existence. But to try and find any gratitude, to even reach for a gratitude journal, doesn't matter if you wrote anything at all, but to reach for it the day your brother died, like that's insane, Rachel. Like that's incredible. You really are amazing. Like I'm actually just dumbfounded by all of that. But I totally, yeah, everything you're saying makes just complete logical sense. But I think we do go through life sometimes on autopilot, not really paying attention to like where we're at mentally in our lives. Are we actually achieving things that we wanted to achieve? And I can imagine being a parent makes that all really challenging too. But like for you, you have like so many different roles to play in life. Like, how do you prevent being getting burned out from all of that? Because it just sounds like really busy.
I have, I do burn out a lot. But I'll be honest. So I had thyroid cancer just before the pandemic. I think I had something called sleep paralysis, and it was coming up to Christmas time. I remember waking up at nighttime and just being completely numb, and wanting to call out to my husband, and literally just not able to get the words out. I
Yeah.
couldn't figure out what it was. And I took note of it. And I think over 10 nights, it happened 7 nights, to the point that I said, I need to do something. And my aunt had a stroke when she was 46. So there's a history of that. So I went to the doctor, and she sent me for loads of different tests. Everything came back clear. But the final test was an ultrasound on my neck. And it was one of those, was like, oh, we were after finding something. So, we went through several things, and it turned into the fact that I needed to get a biopsy in the November. Then they decided that I needed surgery. And on the 9th of March 2020, I had the surgery, and I was absolutely blessed. Everything went really, really well. But by the end of the week, the country had closed down because of the pandemic. Um, so obviously, I was really disappointed that I missed out in 2 weeks at home on my own. I had my gorgeous kids at home with me, giving me lots of hugs. And but I was isolated from everybody as well at that stage. But a month after my surgery, the doctor called to say it's actually cancer. It's thyroid cancer that you have, or you had. So I went in to meet him, and he said, look, if there was ever cancer that you wanted to get, it would be thyroid cancer, that it's not aggressive at all. We've completed the surgery, like there's nothing else to do, but we will send you to a consultant once a year and get an ultrasound. I think it was every 6 months in the beginning.
Yeah.
So thankfully that was all that's all resolved, and I'm absolutely fine with that. But I suppose in a sense, I remember the Sunday before I was due to go for my surgery. I'm a huge fan of Jerry Hussey.
Yes.
Do you know Jerry Hussey?
He's the
Yeah.
best.
So he's the best. So I mean, this is the incredible thing. Like I could invite Jerry Hussey into my home on a podcast. Before my surgery, I was listening to him, and it was all very
Mm.
much like, you are enough, you are absolutely going to be fine, you are safe. So you're building yourself up, because for me, the thyroid was like they were cutting into where I breathe. It wasn't like it was a baby finger that if they chopped it off, it would be fine.
Of
There was a whole
course.
fear around that
Very
that sense of,
invasive.
yeah, very, and yeah, absolutely. And so I really prepared myself. But the day before, I did a video on Instagram, and it was like about being kind to yourself. I didn't speak too much about it at all, I don't think. But when I look back at that video, I look really haggard. Like I have got too much makeup on. I look dehydrated. My skin and my hair, everything looked burnt out. And I remember journaling in the diary before that. And it was like, I've hit rock bottom. I've burnt out. I need to get help. And the help was I wanted to book in with a coach or a counselor or something like that.
Mm.
So when I feel like I'm on the hamster wheel, I look back to that and I remind myself. But that was not that was the last time I burnt out, but I very much see myself on, almost like, my brother draws this really well, but it's like a circle, and you start at the top and it's really high energy and it's go, 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 and you're doing really well, but then you forget to look after yourself, and then you kind of hit a lull, and you're really like stagnant and overwhelmed and
Mm.
tired, and that kind of antsy feeling.
Yeah.
And then you sort of stay like that, and then you sort of come out of it. It's almost like the seasons of the year, like the
Yeah, it
spring,
sounds
the
like
summer,
it.
the autumn, you're slowing down, and the winter, you're kind of hibernating. So I can recognize the signs much quicker. I'm a lot more aware of signs from my body. Like I would get stressed around my jaw, I get kind of prickles in my neck. But I have a really, really robust self-care practice that prevents me from burning myself out, from overscheduling. I mean, every day I do something for my self-care. I start, like this morning, I started off with, I got up at 6 o'clock. So again, it has to be you do you, because you'll tell people,
Yeah.
I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they're like, that's crazy. What the hell are you doing that for? But you don't have to tell people what you do what works for you. So I get up at 6 o'clock. I do my journaling in my room at the moment, and my self-care practice changes, but at the moment it is, I journal 3 pages of just whatever comes up. This morning I was manifesting, so I was writing different things that I want to manifest, because it's the new moon tonight. I think it's tonight or tomorrow. And then I went down and made my cacao and brought it up to my bed, and I had the window open and the fresh air coming in, and I just sat there with my cacao and did a 20-minute meditation. And
Wow.
then I read this beautiful book here that I have, Healing is the New High by Vex King. I don't know if you've read his
Must
book, but
look at that one. No. Look. And it even actually looks pretty. It's gold. Gold is
it's
quite like
gorgeous.
luxurious.
Yeah, it is. And so like, what a way to start your day.
Yeah, like that just sounds like heaven.
Heaven. Now, the impact of that means you can go to bed at half 11 or 12 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So you're making a choice. You're saying, okay, I'm going to go to bed. Like last night, I was in bed at 10 o'clock. I'm going to bed early so I can have that morning. And it is, don't get me wrong, it is easier to stay in bed. But the way like even my morning, I cycled the kids to school, and on the way back, I met a lady that was interested in coming to one of my events. We were yapping away. Another friend that I went on a retreat to Italy. she rang me. We were talking about like all this crazy stuff about really great things happening. And I was like, it's 10:15 and already I've had the best day ever.
Wow.
But you're setting your intentions, and I'm very much on like my vibration and where am I, how am I feeling,
Yeah.
how can I move myself up the scale? Like maybe I need to light a candle, maybe I need to go for a walk, maybe I need to stick on a bit of music. So I'm always tuned in to how I'm feeling, what is it that I need, who are the people that I want to have a chat with. Even this
Yes.
thing of complaining, we can find that we're going down a road of complaining all the time, or oh my god it's so cold, or and we have to really really watch that. And so I'm really intentional with most parts of my day now, not all the time, but sometimes when I'm off track, or when I'm like over shopping or overeating or staying up late, I need that, because I'm like, okay, great, here I am, I don't want to be there anymore, let's get back into the good practices.
That's the thing. Like, and as you say, we're not perfect. Like, just because we talk about like these tips and advice that we can give other people, like, we don't live by it rigidly. Like, it would be great if we did, but we just don't. Like, we're human, and life throws things at you. So I
Yeah.
think like that's really fair, and you're very honest on Instagram as well, which I know people appreciate and relate to. I like that thing that you explained about the scale. I think it's a good way to check in with yourself. If you want to like explain the scale thing a little bit.
I use the scale on nearly every workshop or online event, in-person event, and also with my clients. And like there's a more like drawn out scale that Abraham Hicks uses. I think it's like 22 levels on it. But for
Oh
me, it's
wow.
asking yourself, like on a scale of 1 to 10, where am I? How am I feeling? So like even Aoife, checking in now, like where are you on your scale? Would you think? If
I'm
10 is
actually
amazing.
low, like this last few days. That's what I'm saying. Like, I've actually, had a bit of a crappy weekend, realized there's other things about me I need to work on. So I felt a bit deflated. So I'd say I'm actually probably only like 4.5 on my scale, to be completely honest. I have a bit of a
Okay.
podcast mask on today. That's me being honest.
Yeah. So, first of all, we're making ourselves aware. So, okay, today I feel like a 4.5. There's no judgment. I just feel a 4.5. Sometimes that might be a 1, sometimes it's an 8. And what I'm noticing, what you're saying is that like over the weekend, me on my scale, I was like an 8 this morning. Then I could go down to a 4, then I could go to a 5, and then I could go to a 1. So it can move within a day. I don't really stay stuck. So we're creating awareness around it. 4.5. We're accepting it. Okay, I'm feeling like this because maybe I've been watching too much TV, or maybe I haven't been moving my body, or maybe I've been drinking too much alcohol. Just accepting it. That's fine.
It was that
Uh,
latter, actually.
Alcohol. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what's amazing? Before I used to drink alcohol and not realize of the after effects. Now I'm like, okay, I'll drink alcohol. I know I'm going to have the fear. I know I'm
Yeah.
going to feel a bit crappy for 3 or 4 days. So what's the choice? Am I going to do it and just deal with it, or am I not going to do it? And then the third part of that is the action. What's the action I'm going to take? So if you're at a 4.5, what would it be like to move to a 5? What would you do today that could move you up to a 5? And asking yourself that question.
I know, and I've been putting those things off because I kind of reassessed my relationship with alcohol over the weekend, and I was like, I actually think I don't want to drink alcohol for a while because I don't have as much control over it as I thought I did. So that made me feel a bit crappy about myself, because I was like, Jesus, Eve, all the stuff you've gone through, and like, why is this an issue? Like, how is this dawning on you at 30? Like, so I feel like, oh, you don't deserve to do the things that will make you feel better now. You deserve to be feeling a bit crappy there because you did this to yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
I know so much better than all of that. And I would, if you told me that, Rachel, I'd be like, Rachel, for God's sake, But that's
Yeah.
just, I'm very like being hard on myself the last day or two.
Yeah. And also, we have to be so careful of how we talk to ourselves, because we can pound ourselves down. So, what I try and encourage people to be is be curious. Oh, wow. You know what? Like, Aoife, when you drink, it really affects you 3 or 4 days afterwards. You're really mean to yourself. You deserve to feel better. It's not like, "Arr." It's like you deserve to
Mm,
feel better. You are such a good person. You have so much to do. I know that you enjoy your wine, but at the minute, maybe it's like taken away from too much of the good stuff. And believe me, I'm hearing like I'm nearly 30. I am 40. I'm 41 and I'm still examining my relationship with alcohol. And I'm still realizing that I like Rachel better sober than Rachel with alcohol. But yet I still go out, I still
Yeah.
drink too much wine or whatever. And then afterwards it's given out afterwards. But it's about being curious. What would Rachel be like on a night out with no
Mm-hmm.
alcohol? How
Yeah,
would that affect her? What would she plan for the next morning? I have a
that's
Christmas
it.
party coming up on Saturday, and I'm like, what do I do? Like, do I drink alcohol? Do I da 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 da? And so it's an internal thing going on, but just being
Mm-hmm.
curious about it. And I did an event recently, and I asked everybody about their scale. And what was really curious was the way people answered. So they scored their outside world as like maybe an 8 or a 9. In other words, like their relationship, their kids, their house, their holidays, that was all our 8 or a 9. But internally, they were a 2 or a 3.
Wow,
Isn't
that's
that amazing?
low.
Yes. So everything looked great, but inside they were feeling really, really low.
And that's
And
probably just so common if that was like the theme of the day. Like that obviously is a common thing.
yeah. And I said the opposite. I said, actually, externally, things are like a 2 or a 3, but internally, I'm an 8 or
Wow.
a 9 because it's putting those practices, being aware of what are my values, what's important to me. Because again, when I'm acting like my values would be my first one is gratitude. If everything is all over the place, it's
Mm-hmm.
always okay, click into gratitude. And I have like my brother Barry, he's only arrived in Africa today. He travels all over the
Wow,
world.
cool.
Yeah, and myself and him get along really well. My sister's the same. Like the three of us are very growth mindset. Like we can get on the phone and within 10 minutes, like right in
That's
straight into the
nice.
deep stuff.
I'd love
So
that. I'm the weirdo in my family. I'd love that. Have some
and
phone bills.
the crazy thing about it is, I suppose my brother Alan, who died, he was probably the one that was into this stuff. I remember him talking about all this stuff before he died.
Mm.
He would have been probably the weirdo, and now we've all kind of come on board with it. So it's really great to have that. And I suppose it's asking yourself like, what are the things? What are my things that bring me up the scale? Your things are probably very different to that. So instead of judging yourself around it, just being curious about it and asking
Yeah.
yourself. And sometimes we talk about this healing thing, and I just did a video before coming on, and there's this thing in the book that I was reading there, and I know I'm healing, right? So I'm healing myself, you're healing, all this work is healing. But then I was like, what is healing? Like, what does it mean? And the explanation that I got from that book was that healing is looking at our patterns of belief, of our the things that hold us back, of the things that we're told that we should believe in the past. Then we're in the present, we're building a new belief system that empowers us, that supports us. And then the future part is embracing the unknown and knowing that we're going to be okay, regardless of what challenges come. And I just thought it was so beautiful, because for me, I used to think healing was something has happened to you, so you have to heal. But healing is needed for everybody. And there's no end to that. So unfortunately, for when you turn 40, it's not going to be like, okay, she has it all sorted. Because that's what I thought was going
What?
to
Are you
happen.
serious?
Yeah, well, I write a handbook and give it to you, but it doesn't work like that. And you heal some parts, so you might get the alcohol thing sorted, and then something else comes in. But
Yeah.
that's life, and that's the journey. And if we had it all, like I have clients that come to me and they say, I can't believe I'm 25 and I don't have it all figured out. And I said, hallelujah. Like, who the hell would you be if you had it
Uh,
all figured out at 65? Like, where's the fun? Where's the openness? Where's the curiosity? Where is the excitement if you have everything figured out? So it's like, that's, I think for me, when you said about like not burning out and everything, I like to live my life in a flow of like going with the flow, being open to what happens, listening to myself, challenging myself, connecting with new people. And my goal for myself is to live a life of ease.
I mean, that's
E-
that's what the goal, like that inner peace, even
Yes.
when the chaos is happening all around us. Generally, I do feel like that, but as you say, like we think, and I've thought I've been doing so well for so long, but then you learn more about yourself, like, oh, actually, I'm a bit blind here to that issue. Maybe I could do with working on that a little bit more. And that's the thing, though. It's just an endless journey. I am being too hard on myself, though. You're so right. Like, I barely even told Rachel that much about this situation, and she's like life coaching me to a T here. So I'm like, I need a one-to-one.
Yeah. And also, I'm reading a great book, and it's, you can guess I love reading. The book is Stop Fixing Yourself.
Oh,
Like,
wow. That's
yeah,
interesting.
like what if we just accepted ourselves as we were without this feeling of I have to fix this and I have this issue and I have that issue? What if we were to just embrace who we are, and like maybe we can change like the environments that we're in, or like the people that we're hanging out with, or like, stop watching the news. So like just being very aware of what we're bringing into our life, what we're calling into our life. Maybe that's the side of things that we can change, instead of always trying to change who we are as people, or the way we think, or the way we behave, because there is no end. And sometimes it's like, oh God, do I need to put in 3 more years of healing before I'm fully healed? It's
Mm.
evolving, but accepting and allowing yourself to be who you are, because who you are is a result of things that's happened to you in the past. So it's about enjoying the journey. And I always remember when I was qualifying as a life coach, one of the tutors, I really admired her. Her name was Marion Byrne. And I remember saying to her, she was, say, 10 or 15 years into her coaching career. And I said to her, what would you tell yourself as a coach starting out? And she said, I would tell myself to enjoy the journey. And I really believe in that, because when I'm, setting up my coaching business and I'm trying to figure out Instagram and I don't post enough videos and all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff, and it can be pound, 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 pound myself. Like, what if I just enjoyed it? What if I just enjoyed figuring out Instagram? What if I just enjoyed doing podcasts? What if I just embrace the fact that sometimes when I'm doing my videos, the kids are in the background and you can see my messy kitchen? And I think that's what draws people, because this idea of saying you need to meditate for an hour a day, you need to get out
Yeah.
in nature, it doesn't work for most people with busy lives, because it's not feasible to do. Or maybe it'll be feasible to do someday when you're 70 years of age and you have nothing else to do. But my practice, as you can see, like I actually work part-time now. In September, I went part-time as a teacher so that I could continue to expand and grow my coaching practice. So if on paper it looks really, really busy, but I refuse to feel like that. I just embrace it, enjoy it. And one of the days I was getting in loads of emails from people, can you do this? Can you do that? And I was like, oh my God. I said, hang on, this is what you wanted. You've
Yeah.
created what you've wanted. Bloody well enjoy it,
Yeah, it's
enjoy
so
it.
true.
So, yeah.
It's so true. Hey guys, did you know that my breathwork coaching services are officially live for you to book into? Why not expand your inner growth journey even further with me and book into my weekly workshops held every Wednesday evening, or one of my Feel It Out drop in sessions held every Tuesday and Thursday evenings? If you are particularly struggling with something such as grief, overwhelm, self confidence issues, motivation, chronic fatigue, or pain, book in for a free consultation before attending some of my one-to-one breathwork coaching with me. You can find out more at breathewithaoife.com. I think what you're saying there, about like what we're listening to on the news and what we're kind of consuming on a daily basis, it's a bit like, well, it's a bit negative in general, but like at the moment there's like so much financial challenges facing people, like as business owners, or people facing like redundancies and stuff like that at the moment. And it's scary because like there is very limited amount of control we actually have over that. So like how can people, I suppose, avoid the complete overwhelm from what's going on at the moment? Have you any advice?
Yeah, I mean, it was like this kind of came to me over COVID. So, every evening at 9 o'clock, we all sat down to watch the news and how many people were sick and how many people
Yeah.
had died. And at the time, I got the three young kids. They went up to bed at 8 o'clock, and then I'd stick on a cup of tea, and myself and my husband would sit in and watch the news. And then I was like, this is crazy. Like, I love being with the kids, but I love them going to bed. And I'm spending that time watching the news and hearing about all this bad stuff. And it's not about burying your head in the sand or, not helping out anybody. But I decided that I wasn't watching it anymore. So I decided to watch things like Modern Family, which is the comedy
So good.
show, which I absolutely loved. Like, can you imagine watching Modern Family from 9 to 9:30, as opposed to watching the news from 9 to 9:30. Like you'd be a different person afterwards. So the
Definitely.
vibe, you can feel that energy, like afterwards having a laugh, having, or the other one, like, oh my God, this is awful,
Yeah.
going to bed feeling like that. It's like putting that extra concrete block in your head. So it is very much about being a really good person in your community as much as possible. Like even say with the war in Ukraine, like I donated stuff.
Yeah.
We had Ukrainian children coming to our school. You're going out of your way to make sure that you're being kind, or you're noticing local community things that you can do to help. But by me sitting down and watching the news about what's going on in the world all over the place, like we have so much access now to news everywhere. And I remember one
Mm.
morning getting up, and a lot of studies would say don't go near your phone in the morning time. And by the time I got up out of my bed and walked into the toilet, I had seen about a child who had died from cancer, like just really awful stories. And you're like, you're bringing. So if I bring that in, and then my kids come in the morning, and I'm feeling like triggered, or a bit antsy about that, I could end up shouting at them. So it's control the controllables. And if you imagine a cup and a saucer, so if we think of the things in the cup as the things that we can control, so what we can control is, our relationships to a certain extent, our sleep, our nutrition,
Yes.
our exercise, how we spend our time, how we allow ourselves to play and to have fun, music, what we read, our goals, how we want to spend our life, how we want to create our life. And then outside that if you imagine the saucer, then the saucer, the things that are in the saucer are the things that are outside our control. So that would be the weather. Like how many people spend all day complaining about the weather? It's so cold today. You're like, yeah, you live in Ireland, move somewhere else. I always remember years ago, I remember like when I had one of the kids very young, and I would bring him out for a walk every day because I was in the house. I'd, put my coat on, and every single day I would go for a walk. And yet you would talk to people and they'd say, oh, it's been raining all day. And you're saying, it wasn't raining all day because I was out in it. So people get into these
So
patterns of
true.
behavior that maybe they have not much else to talk about. So they'll talk about the weather, they'll talk about the traffic, they'll talk about the politicians,
Mm.
they'll talk about COVID, they'll talk, like I met someone recently and they were saying, this is probably about a year ago, and he was saying, oh, it's awful, isn't it, with COVID? And I said, well, everything is open now. Like, what is it that you want to do that you feel you can't do? And he couldn't answer the question. He had just got into a pattern of behavior of giving out about COVID. So that was blocking him from kind of getting back to a normal life. So we have to ask ourselves, where are we spending more of our time? Are we spending it on the outside of things we can control, or are we spending it on the inside? And honestly, I really, really enjoyed that time of COVID. And that's not to say that I'm not sorry for the people who died over that time, or the people who got really
No.
unwell, or the healthcare workers. But I decided to focus on my bubble in our house. What can I do to help us? Because when I'm feeling better, that rippled out. Like over COVID, I became so busy. I did lots of free Zoom sessions. I did loads of workshops. So by me feeling good, I was able to expel that energy out to other people, and that ripple effect, like who knows? There was hundreds of people on those workshops. So who knows the good that that did? Um, we used to get out for walks all of the time. I was very aware that rather than being in work, I had the time to spend with my kids. Now, don't get me wrong, there were times when I was tearing my hair out and I was upset. My family
Yeah.
lived down in Gorey, so I wasn't getting to see them. It wasn't all whippity doo dah, but it was very much being intentional. Okay, this is it. I can't control that the schools are closed. I can't control that we're all here together, but what can I control? Let's go for coffee and go for a walk. Let's like get into our pajamas and watch a movie during the day. Let's light some candles and get cozy. So I was focusing on what I could control as opposed to focusing on what was outside my control. And that's where the power is. And when clients come to me at first, they're on the outer circle a lot of the time. And they are coming up with reasons and excuses as to why they can't do what they want to do. But it's about moving them closer into, and even people who are feeling sick, like are under the weather or in hospital or anything like that. It's like, where are you focusing your control on? And that was the thing. Like I remember doing a workshop very, very close to my surgery and saying to them, by the way, I could have cancer, I could be fine. And they were like, I don't know, just like, how are you okay with this? And I was like, well, I can't control it. It might be happening, but I could be hit by a bus tomorrow. So I bloody well I'm going to enjoy my day today. And having that attitude of just being in the moment,
Yeah.
it just helped me to enjoy those few months instead of saying, you know what, 2020 was a nightmare, because people do that and they lose 2 or 3 or 4 years But it doesn't have to be like that.
That's so, like, it sounds so obvious when you put it like that. And I think it's all about like catching it before it gets too bad, because like sometimes then it could just, you're down a hole and it can be really hard to dig yourself out of that hole, especially without any external support like a life coach. So yeah, I think it's about catching that. If you could like recommend maybe like 3 different ways how we can just check in with ourselves regularly, like what is a good way to check in with yourself? Like, okay, so we probably could do the scale. That would be really a good one, I suppose.
The scale is amazing. And first of all, asking yourself, and I just put my hand on my heart because we're up here in our head all the time. What
Mm.
about this? And what about that? And what am I going to wear? And why did she say that to me? I put my hand on my heart and I'm moving from my head to how it feels. So asking myself, like, okay, now I can feel my heart is beating. I feel amazing. I feel like we need to like make a 3 day podcast because I just
Yeah.
keep talking and talking. So I feel that energy because I know that this is really good stuff. I know that this is what helps me and it's trying to ripple out to you and to your listeners. But saying, where am I? And then the second question is even more important. What do I need? So
Yeah.
I'm at a 1 today. What do I need? And the most unusual answers come up. Like one time it was like, you need a shower. And I suppose the things that naturally come to us now, I know that that shower, that energy, it's like the water brushing the energy off. Like our
Yeah.
bodies are so intelligent. And like as I spoke earlier about getting onto the ground, now I know that was grounding. I didn't know what that was, but I
Yeah.
knew my body had that instinct to do that. So where am I on the scale and what is it that I need? The second thing that I would say is have a journaling practice. So this is like absolutely, I mean, if I was going to a desert island, I wouldn't take my kids, I'd take my journal because that's how
To
important it
survive.
is to me. Yeah, and I always say if anything ever happens to me, clear out the journals, like just make a big bonfire. So I journal every evening. It's my practice before I go because I love reading, but I will do my 3 things that I'm grateful for. And honestly, I normally have like 20, 30 things, and it's not, my life is really, really normal, but it's like I see the stuff. Like I see the
Mm.
podcast with Aoife. I see the chat that I had with the mom. I see the fact that I chipped my tooth and now it's fixed today. I recognize these things that are like I'm so grateful for these things. And then after my gratitude practice, I journal for like literally about 3 or 4 minutes, probably about 15 lines. And it will be like, today was a really good day, but you have put a lot on your plate. Tomorrow, we need to really, really slow it down. And maybe you need to lie in because you're getting to bed tonight quite late. You're a bit snappy with the kids. So maybe tomorrow needs to be extra huggy. Um, so it's not writing down what happened. It's just being curious about it. How can I support myself? What went well? What do I need to improve on? You know, what was a complete shit show? So it's just reflecting on your day because I mean, in order to get better, we have to reflect back on what's already happened. Then in the morning time, I pick this practice and I let it go. But when I do it, it's amazing. So it's 3 pages of freehand, and it comes from the book The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. So I really recommend that book. But she suggests to just write out 3 pages, just freehand, and it's beside my bed. So when I wake up in the morning, first thing I just write. It takes about 20 minutes. And oh my God, like the insights that come out of that, like things that I don't even know are bothering me. And it's really good for when you're feeling low, but when you're feeling good, the ideas that come in are amazing. Like the other day was like, I really want to be intentional about my Christmas. I don't want to be all about spending money.
Mm.
And maybe I'll invite my friends over. That would be great. I'm not going to see my parents on Christmas Day, so maybe I could invite them up. So by the end of it, afterwards, I said to myself, oh my God, I texted my friends. I was like, you all come over on this night. We'll escape the Christmas madness and we'll have tea and mince pies. The next message was to my family, you're all invited up. So it's kind of giving you that mental clarity to look at what's going on. And most of the time after it, I'm absolutely buzzing. So the emotion, the scale, number one. Number two, the journal. And number three, like I have to suggest therapy. I go to a counselor, probably I go to a counselor and a coach, and once a month I'm talking to one of them.
Is there
So
much
it's
difference in counseling and coaching, actually? I'm sure that is a common kind of question.
yeah. So I mean, I was speaking with my counselor recently, and we've been together quite a while. And I said to her, I'm not even sure if I'm being counseled now. Like, what do you think this is? And she said it's about evolving and evaluating.
Mm.
And I really like that. But counseling is more here I am in the present. This is what's happened. Let's have a look at this. How is that affecting me now? And sometimes it can be quite heavy. And also to note, like for me, I used to think that counseling was only for people who possibly were abused or had,
Yeah.
really awful things happen to them. Nothing awful really has happened to me. And yet I will never be without a counselor. It's just my chance to just hear myself speaking out loud and get someone to almost say it back to me and get me to question it or get me to think about it in a different way, maybe to catch me from speaking negatively about myself, and also affirming like how well I'm actually doing, because oh, I should have done that, or this isn't done, or I should be further ahead of my business. And it's to catch that. The coaching side of it then is very much present, future focused. So this is where I am. These are the actions that I want. This is my beliefs around this. How can I, like, how I describe coaching is it's very much a subtractive method. So letting go of expectations, letting go of beliefs, letting go of fears, because it's like going around carrying two like really heavy
Mm.
suitcases, and we want to put them down, because if we're carrying them, it's going to be very hard for us to project forward, to set goals for ourselves, to challenge ourselves, to step into our power. So we're letting that stuff go, and then we're opening up that space for ourselves. So there is a place for both. And I mean, there has been times when I haven't had a coach, and I feel now I have to walk the walk. If I'm promoting coaching and talking about how important it is, I have my own coach. And it's always like I sit down, like, no, I've nothing to talk about. And 3 minutes in, it's like, ah! So it's just so important. And it's just that check in, it's the accountability
Yeah.
piece. And even for my own coaching sessions, I coach for 1 hour, and then a week later, I have a 15-minute check in call. So it's that accountability piece. Okay, so you said you were going to do this, this, and this. How's it been? And there's no judgment. It might be, I didn't get to do it because I was sick. That's absolutely fine. Well, what do we need to focus on with the week going ahead? And like, I've just seen some unbelievable transformations with the clients that I've worked with. Some of them are external, whether they're to do with promotions. I work with a lot of really busy people in like different corporations. I work with anybody and everybody. Sometimes it's parenting, sometimes it's confidence, sometimes it's health. It can be anything at all. And sometimes they will come to me for one thing and it ends up being something else. But when you make headway 1 area of your life, it will ripple through all the rest. So yeah, so I that would be my third tip to apps. And coaching and counseling can be quite expensive. Use the podcast, listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
Like Mel Robbins has an incredible podcast. If you were to listen to that, you could
Yeah.
absolutely write down like ways to goal set. Use your library. I mean, I go to my library all the time. There is so much knowledge out there, YouTube videos, TED Talks. So some way to like flood yourself with positivity, with self-belief, with confidence, with allowing yourself to make mistakes. That's, people have such a fear of failing, of making mistakes, and the only way you'll fail is if you don't try. Like there's no emotion worse than regret of looking at other people and saying, I could have done that, but I didn't. I've coached so many people and they may have let 5 or 10 years pass, or people will be in touch with me about coaching and then I'll hear nothing from them. And then a year will pass and saying, I wish I came to you back when I first thought. But everyone comes to coaching when they're ready. And
Yeah.
if you are committing to it, you have to be willing to say, I'm going to do something about this, because sometimes people come and they're like, what would you do? And you say, well, I'm not living your life. You have to do what works for you, but you have to be committed to making a change, because if nothing changes, nothing changes. And you will often see people living the same life year after year after year after year after year, and they're 20 years older and they're doing exactly the same thing. They've got the
Mm.
same hairstyle, they have the same friendships, they're going on the same holidays, and that's absolutely fine for some people. But for some people, it can make them feel flat. And I hear things like, I feel like it's Groundhog Day. I feel like I'm on the hamster wheel. I feel like I get to the end of the day and I wake up and I'm doing exactly the same thing. And people just get bored and they get stagnant. And that's what brings a lot of people to coaching as well.
And it's also literally like, to make this all full circle, it's literally what you said at the start. Like, you forget that you have control over your life. You actually have gone so used to not having an active role in the control area that you're just like, oh, well, this is what I do now, so I have to do it again. It's like,
Yeah.
no, here we go. This is the way to do it. I love that you have the little accountability check in too. I try to do that as well with my clients, because breathwork coaching can be like, a breathwork session can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes, and it can take a couple of days to like let it all process. So it is good to do that extra accountability check-in. But your other services, you also have some retreats and stuff going on, and you've done loads of podcast interviews. Is there anything else you wanted to share with the listeners in relation to like connecting with you?
Yeah, I mean, if you come over onto my page, sometimes I'm really active and then other times you don't hear from me at all. But it's a lot of the stuff that I do is in-person events. I've just recently started doing that. I collaborate with lots of people as well. I love doing events with people because sometimes being a business owner on your own can be quite lonely. So I team up quite a lot with this lady called Elaine from K Therapy. She's a Reiki healer, and the energy with the two of us just incredible. So I'm always creating. I'm always, trying to learn more. I'm always upskilling. I'm doing a manifestation course at the minute. So I feel like I'm kind of at a crossroads and I'm going to create I've loads of ideas, but I said, I'll do this manifestation course first and then just let the ideas flow. But yeah, Rachael Smith coaching on Instagram is where you'll find me.
And she's Rachael,
AEL.
because I looked up a different Rachael Smith and got myself into a whole situation. I just have like a couple of rapid fire questions for you. Best advice you've ever received?
It's better to regret the things you do than the things you don't do.
Ooh, I like it. The worst advice you've ever received?
I suppose it's not necessarily advice that I've ever received, but
Mm,
sometimes when I've told people things that I want to do, you'll get their fears or their reasons as to why it doesn't work. Like it doesn't make sense to a lot of people as to why I would move away from teaching. It's like, yeah, but what about your pension? And it's like, I was 35. I was like, what? Like, I'm working, I could be dead by the time I'm getting my pension. So,
true.
not to take on other people's fears, and also choose the people that you want to share your dreams with. So, if I know if I was to sit down with you, even talk about all my plans, you'd be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. You tell someone else, and they're like, oh, yeah, but what about this? And what about money? And what will people
Yeah.
think? So, just be very, very aware of who you're sharing your stuff with. And it's your life. So, it's that idea of, at the end of your life, all of the ghosts come in of your potential, of your gifts, of your talents, of your ideas, of your creativity. And they say to you as you lie on your deathbed, we were here. We were here for you, but you didn't realize us. You didn't
Wow.
choose us. You just left us behind. I don't want to have any ghosts around. I want to be able to say that I tried everything. I had fun. I tried things and they failed. Like, we want to have stories to be able to tell. We don't want to go through our life following the absolute blueprint, which most people are doing. I think only something like, I don't know, 10 or 15% of people are interested in this personal development world. Most people are just going through the
Really?
motions. It's very, very low. And not only there are a lot of people who listen to it, but there are also an even smaller number of people who actually take action on it. So maybe you think that everyone is doing it, but maybe it's the people
Yeah.
that you're connecting with.
Surrounding. Yeah. That's so
That's
true. And I think that's a massive one. I know I'm supposed to say this was rapid fire round. This is what happens
yeah,
when I try to do this. This segment never works.
yeah.
um, but like, yeah, so like people get so used to like, oh, I'm gonna go to my best friend or my sister or my mom because I'm having this issue and they're the person I go to. But like choose who to go to for certain issues, because like
Yes.
you're not gonna get business advice from your mom who was a stay-at-home mom her whole life. Like she's not gonna give you the correct, probably most helpful advice. Same with your sister. If you're single, she's married with kids and you don't want kids. Like people have to choose carefully who they're surrounding themselves with and be a little bit more in tune with the energy you're getting off other people.
Mhm.
That's something that really changed my life when I started paying attention to other people's energies. You love your self-care, so a self-care tool that you couldn't live without. Can only pick one now. Actually, you're definitely
I
going to pick your journal.
My journal, but also, yeah, I love my journal. I really do. But also my meditation is massive as well. Like again, it's free. Insight Timer, YouTube videos. Like you sit down, you
Mm,
put in 10 minutes meditation. Like just to give yourself that time and breath work. Like I'm just recently becoming interested in that as well. There's so many free like little courses and everything, like, and it's not getting good at meditation to be good at meditation. You're using your meditation so that when challenges arrive, you're allowing that pause, you're allowing yourself to get back into your
mm.
breath. Like my kids now, when I'm doing the breathing, they're like, okay, here she goes. No, and like my youngest son is in junior infants and they're learning different animal breaths. So there's this one called the bunny breath,
Oh,
and it's like and it's that sniff. And they were having an argument in the back of the car, and I didn't respond, and I just started doing the bunny breath. And after a couple of minutes, they had all joined in. And it's just that sense of creating that space, because when something happens, we snap
Yeah.
straight into it, "Rawr," or we argue, or I can't believe she said
Mhm.
this. Creating that space, bringing your body, like, with the breath work, we go from that flight or fight zone into that
Yeah.
rest and digest, bringing the body back down. And then we make those decisions from a much clearer, calmer space. I mean, it's embracing there's can be chaos going around, but how can I feel calm in my own internal world, that nothing will shake me? That I know how I feel. I'm grounded in how I feel. And we're not going to be like that all the time, but the meditation practice will really help you to practice that, so that you can cope with things in your day to day.
I totally agree. It's so true. Last one, do you have a favorite quote or affirmation?
Yes, my favorite quote is, and I recently got jumpers with Rachel Smith coaching, and on the back of it, it says, "She believed she could, so she did."
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, and
That's
it's
a
like we
gorgeous
become
one.
what we believe. So if I believe that, I'm lazy, or that I never finish anything, or that I'm a bad parent, or I'm a bad friend, guess what? I'm going to find all the reasons to believe that. Whereas now I believe I'm incredible, I'm kind, I'm loving, I love myself. And I use that one because I know people are really uncomfortable saying I love myself. I use love as a verb. So how do I love myself? I love myself by doing things I enjoy. I love myself by having a bath. I love myself by reading my favorite books. It's like an active word for me.
Mm.
That's how I show love to myself. So, she believed she could, so she did. So the Rachel that you see now, 5 years ago, she felt there was something that she could do, but she wasn't sure what it was. And now I'm doing it. And I have plans for a year, 3, 5, like, who knows? There's no end to this. And for me, it doesn't have to be like world domination or become a millionaire. If I was to die in the morning, I'd be happy with what I've achieved so far.
Yeah, I
I'm living
totally
life.
resonate with that because feel like I do have the long term dreams, but I'm also like, generally, apart from the last couple of days, I'm
Yes.
generally just so content. And, we don't have a whole lot of money between us. Sometimes we wonder how we're going to fill up the rest of the tank before Christmas for freezing our asses off. We don't go out for dinner dates. We don't do very luxurious things at all, but we're just like so content in our safe space, in our little bubble here in Wexford. We go to the beach, we're around nature when we need it. We work from home. I'm starting a business. I'm communicating and creating a community of lovely, like-minded people, and it's just so much more fulfilling than a life where I was working my ass off and earning money in a job that was a huge burnout. I was a social care worker doing 12-hour shifts and living with cystic fibrosis. Like, it's so funny when I look back, and then that's also a point to say to people when they're looking in. You don't know what you're looking at, especially from social media or without social media. Like, we just don't know what a person's life really is like behind the closed doors. So comparing will just get you nowhere, really.
And also, you do you, because like only recently I was walking around Dundrum, and I had something like €300 worth of vouchers. You know the way you say, I'd love to have more money, and I'd love to have this. And if I had nice
Mm,
shoes, and if I had, right? Now, I'm not materialistic at all, but I had got these vouchers as gifts. And I was walking in Dundrum, and I was just walking around in circles. And I said to myself, I kept picking up stuff and saying, no, I don't really need that, or picking up, I don't really need that. And I said, here's all this money that I've wanted, and now I have it, and I don't really need it.
yeah.
And I end up going and buying makeup, and I end up buying a nice pair of boots. But what it proved to me was, what's important to me is going for a walk on the beach, is having a
Mm,
cup of tea with my friends, is like lighting the candles and sitting down watching I'm a Celebrity with the kids. That's what's important to me. So maybe I don't need all this money. Like, don't get me wrong, money will make you more comfortable, and you can have travel experiences. I'm not saying we don't need money at all. But ask yourself, is this something that I want, or is this something that society tells me that I need? And especially coming up to Christmas as well, like, you have to go out on nights out, and you have to wear these shoes, and you have to get a new outfit because someone saw that outfit on Instagram last week. You do you, and you understand, like, when I close my door, what is it that is really important to me? What is it that's fills up my cup, that gets me excited. Like, what is it? What is that life that I want to live? And that's again coming back to, you become what you believe. So if you
Mhm.
believe happiness is in walks, quality time, and fresh air, nature, movement, whatever, that's the life that you'll create.
Totally true. Rachel, we've just learned so much from this. I've learned so much from this. So I know the listeners will have as well, because like it's just been so helpful. So thank you so much for all of your time and wisdom. And I can't wait to connect with you further, because I just think you're absolutely amazing. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being here.
Oh, you're so welcome. I just could talk with this all day, but thanks a million for the opportunity. It was incredible.
You're so welcome. Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope you found this week's episode as awe-inspiring as I did. As I always say, knowledge is power, and I know you've gained an abundance of both from this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can watch these episodes over on my YouTube channel, Breathe with Aoife. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to We Share, We Grow wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really enjoyed this episode, please donate over on my Patreon page, patreon.com/Breathe with Aoife, to help me gain the means to share and grow even more with you all. Thanks for listening.